am on page 147, starting Delirium Chapter 10. Phase 1. Preoccupation, difficulty focusing, dry mouth, perspiration, sweaty palms, fits of dizziness and disorientation, reduced mental awareness, racing thoughts, impaired reasoning skills. Phase 2. Periods of euphoria, hysterical laughter, and heightened energy, periods of despair, lethargy, changes in appetite, rapid weight loss or weight gain, fixation, loss of other interests, compromised reasoning skills, distortion of reality, disruption of sleep patterns, insomnia or constant fatigue, obsessive thoughts and actions, paranoia, insecurity. Phase 3. Critical. Difficulty breathing, pain in the chest, throat, or stomach, difficulty swallowing, refusal to eat, complete breakdown of rational faculties, erratic behavior, violent thoughts and fantasies, hallucinations, and delusions. Phase 4. Fatal. Emotional or physical paralysis, partial or total, and death. If you fear that someone you know may have contracted deliria, please call the emergency toll-free line at 1-800-PREVENT to discuss immediate intake and treatment. I'd never understood how Hannah could lie so often and so easily, but just like anything else, lying becomes easier the more you do it. Which is why, when I got home from work that next day and Carol asks me whether I don't mind having hot dogs for the 4th straight night in a row, the result of a shipment surplus at Stop and Save, we once went a whole 2 weeks having baked beans every day, I say that actually Sophia Henderson from St. Anne's invited me and some other girls over for dinner. I don't even have to think about it. The lie just comes. And even though I still feel sweat pricking up under my palms, my voice stays calm, and I'm pretty sure my face keeps its normal color, because Carol just gives me one of her flitting smiles and says, "That sounds nice." At 6:30, I get on my bike and head to East End Beach, where Alex and I agreed to meet. There are plenty of beaches in Portland. East End Beach is probably one of the least popular, which of course made it one of my mother's favorites. The current is stronger there than it is at Willard Beach or Sunset Park. I'm not exactly sure why. I don't mind. I've always been a strong swimmer. After that first time when my mother released her arms from around my waist and I felt both the surging panic and the thrill, the excitement, I learned pretty quickly, and by 4, I was paddling out by myself all the way past the breaks. There are other reasons why most people avoid East End Beach, even though it's only a short walk down from the hill from Eastern Prom, one of the most popular parks. The beach is nothing more than a short strip of rocky, gravel-flecked sand. It backs up against the far side of the lab complex where the storage and waste sheds are, which doesn't make for particularly pretty scenery. And when you swim out at East End Beach, you get a clear view of Tukey's Bridge and the wedge of unregulated land between Portland and Yarmouth. A lot of people don't like being so close to the wilds. It makes them nervous. It makes me nervous, too, except that there's part of me, a tiny little flick of a part, that likes it. For a while after my mom died, I used to have these fantasies that she wasn't dead, really, and that my father wasn't dead either, that they had escaped to the wilds to be together. He had gone 5 years before her to prepare everything, to build a little house with a wood stove and furniture hewed from tree branches. At some point, I imagined they would come back and get me. I even imagined my room down to the smallest detail, a dark red carpet, a little red and green patchwork quilt, red chair. I had the fantasy only a few times before I realized how wrong it was. If my parents had escaped to the wilds, it would make them sympathizers, resistors. It was better that they were dead. Besides, I learned pretty quickly that my fantasies about the wilds were just that, make-believe, little kitty stuff. The invalids have nothing, no way of trading or getting red patchwork quilts or chairs or anything else for that matter. Rachel once told me that they must live like animals, filthy, hungry, desperate. She says that's why the government doesn't bother doing anything about them, doesn't even acknowledge their existence. They'll die out soon enough, all of them, freeze or starve, or just let the disease run its course. Turn them against each other, have them raging and fighting and clawing one another's eyes out. She said as far as we know that's already happened. She said the wilds might be empty now, dark and dead, full of only the rustle and whispers of animals. She's probably right about the other stuff, about the invalids living like animals, but she's obviously wrong about that. They're alive, and they're out there, and they don't want us to forget it. That's why they stage the demonstrations. That's why they let the cows loose in the labs. I'm not nervous until I get to East End Beach. Even though the sun is sinking behind me, it lights the water white and makes everything shimmer. I shield my eyes against the glare and spot Alex down by the water, a long black brushstroke against all that blue. I flash back to last night, to the fingers of one of his hands just pressed against my lower back, so lightly it was like I was only dreaming them. The other hand cupping mine, dry and reassuring as a piece of wood warmed by the sun. We really danced, too, the kind of dancing that people do at their wedding after the pairing has been formalized, but better somehow, looser and less unnatural. He has his back toward me, facing the ocean, and I'm glad. I feel self-conscious as I plod down the rickety salt-warped stairs that lead from the parking lot to the beach, pausing to unlace and kick off my sneakers, which I carry in one hand. The sand is warm on my bare feet as I set off toward him. An old man is coming up from the water, carrying a fishing pole. He shoots me a suspicious glance, then turns to stare at Alex, then looks at me again and frowns. I open my mouth to say, "He's cured," but the man just grunts at me as he walks past, and I can't imagine he'd bother to call the regulators, so I don't say anything. Not that we'd get in trouble if we were caught. That's what Alex meant when he said, "I'm safe." But I don't want to answer a lot of questions and have my ID number run through SVS and all of that. Besides, if the regulators did haul ass all the way to Easton Beach to check out suspicious behavior only to discover it was some cured taking pity on a 17-year-old nobody, they'd definitely be annoyed and guaranteed to take it out on someone. Taking pity. I pushed the words out of my mind quickly, surprised by how difficult it is to even think them. All day I tried not to worry about why on earth Alex would be so nice to me. I even imagined for one brief, stupid second that maybe after my evaluation I'd get matched with him. I'd had to shunt that thought aside, too. Alex has already received his printed sheet, his recommended matches. He would have gotten it even before his cure, directly after the evaluations. He's not married yet because he's still in school, end of story. But he will be as soon as he finishes. Of course, then I started wondering about the kind of girl he's been matched with. Someone like Hannah, I decided, with bright blonde hair and the irritating ability to make even pulling her hair into a ponytail look graceful, like a choreographed dance. There are 4 other people on the beach, a mother and a child 100 feet away, the mother sitting in a faded fabric folding chair staring blankly toward the horizon, while the child, who is probably no more than 3, toddles in the wave, gets knocked over, lets out a shriek of pain, pleasure, and struggles back to her feet. Beyond them a couple is walking, a man and a woman not touching. They must be married. Both have their hands clasped in front of them, and both look straight ahead, not talking. And not smiling either, but calm, as though they are each surrounded by an invisible protective bubble. Then I'm coming up behind Alex, and he turns and sees me and smiles. The sun catches his hair, turns it momentarily white. Then it smolders back to its normal golden brown color. "Hi," he says. "I'm glad you came." I feel shy again, stupid, holding my ratty shoes in one hand. I can feel my cheeks getting hot, so I look down, drop my shoes, turn them over once in the sand with my toe. I said I would, didn't I? I don't mean for the words to come out so harshly, and I wince, mentally cursing myself. It's like there's a filter set up in my brain, except instead of making things better, it twists everything around, so what comes out of my mouth is totally wrong, totally different from what I was thinking. Thankfully, Alex laughs. "I just meant you stood me up last time," he says. He nods towards the sand. "Sit?" "Sure," I say, relieved. I feel much less awkward since we're both settled in the sand. There's less chance of falling over or doing something dumb. I draw my legs up to my chest, resting my chin on my knees. Alex leaves a good 2 or 3 feet of space between us. We sit in silence for a few minutes. At first, I'm searching frantically for something to say. Every beat of silence seems to stretch to an infinity. And I'm pretty sure Alex must think I'm a mute. But then he flicks a half-buried seashell out of the sand and hurls it into the ocean, and I realize he's not uncomfortable at all. After that, I relax. I'm even glad for the silence. Sometimes I feel like if you just watch things, just sit still and let the world exist in front of you, sometimes I swear that for just a second, time freezes and the world pauses in its tilt. Just for a second. And if you somehow find a way to live in that second, then you would live forever. "Tide's going out," Alex says. He chucks another seashell in the high arc, and it just hits the break. I know. The ocean is leaving a litter of pulpy green seaweed, twigs, and scrabbling hermit crabs in its wake, and the air smells tangy with salt and fish. A seagull pecks its way across the beach, blinking, leaving tiny thatched claw prints. My mom used to bring me here when I was little. We'd walk out a little bit at low tide, as far as you can go anyway. Crazy stuff gets stranded on the sand. Horseshoe crabs and giant clams and sea anemone just gets left behind when the water goes out. She taught me to swim here, too. I'm not sure why the words bubble out of me then, why I have this sudden urge to talk. My sister used to stay on the shore and build sand castles, and we would pretend that they were real cities, like we'd swim all the way to the other side of the world, to the uncured places. Even in our games, they weren't diseased at all. Except in our games, they weren't diseased at all, or destroyed or horrible. They were beautiful and peaceful, and built of glass and light and things. Alex stays silent, tracing shapes in the sand with a finger, but I can tell he's listening. The words tumble on. I remember my mom would bounce me in the water on her hip, and then one time, she just let me go. I mean, not for real. I had those little inflatable things on my arms, but I was so scared I started bawling my head off. I was only a few years old, but I remember it. I swear I do. I was so relieved when she scooped me back up, but disappointed, too. Like I'd lost the chance at something great, you know? So, what happened? Alex tips his head back to look at me. "You don't come here anymore?" Your mom lose her taste for the ocean? I look away toward the horizon. The bay is relatively calm today, flat, all shades of blue and purple as it draws away from the beach with a low sucking sound. Harmless. She died, I say, surprised by how difficult it is to say. Alex is quiet next to me and I rush on. She killed herself when I was 6. I'm sorry, he says, so low and quiet I almost miss it. My dad died when I was 8 months old. I don't remember him at all. I think it kind of broke her, you know? My mom, I mean. She wasn't cured. It didn't work. I don't know why. She had the procedure 3 separate times, but it didn't fix her. I pause, sucking in a breath, afraid to look at Alex, who is still and silent next to me as a statue, as a carved piece of shadow. Still, I can't stop speaking. I realize strangely that I've never told the story of my mother before. I've never had to. Everyone around me, everyone in school, all my neighbors and my aunt's friends, they all knew about my family already, and my family's shameful secrets. That's why they always looked at me pityingly from the corner of their eyes. That's why for years I rode a wave of whispering into every room, who was slapped with a sudden silence when I entered, silence and guilty, startled faces. Even Hannah knew before she and I were desk partners in 2nd grade. I remember because she found me in the bathroom stall, crying into a piece of paper towel, stuffing my mouth with it so no one would hear, and she kicked the door right open with a foot and stood there staring. "Is it because of your mom?" she said, the first words she ever spoke to me. I didn't know there was something wrong with her. I didn't know she was sick. I was too young to understand. I keep my eyes focused on the horizon, a solid, thin line, taut as a tightrope. The bay edges farther from us, and as always I have the same fantasy I did as a child, that maybe it won't come back, maybe the whole clan will disappear forever, drawn back across the surface of the earth like lips retracing over teeth, retracting over teeth, revealing the cool white hardness underneath, the bleached bone. If I had known, maybe I could have... At the last second my voice falters and I can't say any more. I can't finish the sentence. Maybe I could have stopped it. It's a sentence I've never spoken before, never even allowed myself to think. But the idea is there, looming up solid and unavoidable, a sheer rock face. I could have stopped it. I should have stopped it. We sit in silence. At some point during my story, the mother and child must have packed up and gone home. Alex and I are all alone on the beach. Now that the words aren't bubbling, rushing out of me, I can't believe how much I've shared with a next-to-perfect stranger. A boy, no less. I'm suddenly itchingly, squirmingly embarrassed. I'm desperate for something to say, something harmless about the tide or the weather, but as usual, my mind goes totally blank now that I actually need it to function. I'm afraid to look at Alex. When I finally work up the courage to shoot him a tiny sidelong glance, he's sitting, staring out at the bay. His face is completely unreadable except for a tiny muscle which flutters in and out at the base of his jaw. My heart sinks, just like I feared. He's ashamed of me now, disgusted by my family's history, by the disease that runs in my blood. At any second he'll stand up and tell me it's better if he doesn't speak to me anymore. It's weird. I don't even really know Alex, and there's an impassable divide between us, but the idea upsets me anyway. I'm 2 seconds away from jumping up and running away, just so I won't have to nod and pretend to understand when he turns to me and says, "Listen, Lena, I'm sorry, but..." and gives me that all-too-familiar look. Last year, there was a rabid dog loose on the hill, biting and snapping at everyone, frothing at the mouth. It was half-starved, mangy, flea-riddled, and missing one leg, but it still took 2 cops to shoot it down. A crowd gathered to watch, and I was there. I stopped on the way back from my run. For the first time in my life, I understood the look that people had been giving me forever. The same curl of the lip whenever they hear the name Holloway. Pity, yes, but disgust also, and fear of contamination. It was the same way they were looking at the dog while he circled and snapped and spit, and then a massive exhalation of relief when the 3rd bullet finally took him down and he stopped twitching. Just when I think I can't take it anymore, Alex reaches over and barely skims my elbow with one finger. "I'll race you," he says, standing up and beating the sand off his shorts. He reaches a hand out to me and helps me up, a smile flickering back on his face. I'm endlessly grateful to him in that second. He's not going to hold my family's past against me. He doesn't think I'm dirty or damaged. He pulls me to my feet, and I think he squeezes my hand once I'm standing, a quick pulse, and I'm startled and happy, thinking of my secret sign with Hannah. "Only if you've got a thing for total humiliation," I say. He raises his eyebrows. "So you think you can beat me?" "I don't think. I know." "We'll see about that." He cocks his head to the side. "First one to the buoys, then?" That throws me. The tide doesn't go out too far in the bay. The buoys are still floating on at least 4 feet of water. "You want to race into the bay?" "Scared?" he asks, grinning. "I'm not scared, I'm just..." "Good." He reaches out and brushes my shoulder with 2 fingers. "Then how about a little less conversation and a little more... Go!" He screams out the last word and takes off at full speed. It takes me 2 whole seconds to launch myself after him, and I'm calling out, "No fair, I wasn't ready!" And both of us are laughing as we splash through the shallows in our clothes, the little ripples and dips of the ocean floor now exposed by the tide's retreat. Shells crunch under my feet. I get my toe caught in a tangle of red and purple seaweed and nearly do a faceplant. I push myself off the wet sand with a palm and get my balance again, have almost caught up to Alex when he ducks down and scoops up a handful of wet sand, whirling around to peg me with it. I shriek and duck out of the way, but a bit of it still catches me on the cheek, dribbling down my neck. "You're such a cheater," I manage to gasp, out of breath from running and laughing. "You can't cheat if there are no rules," Alex shoots back over his shoulders. "No rules, huh?" We're splashing shin deep now, and I start palming water at him, making a splatter pattern over his back and shoulders. He turns around, sweeping his arm across the surface of the water, a glittering arc. I twist to avoid it, and end up slipping and falling elbow deep, soaking my shorts and the bottom half of my t-shirt, the sudden cold making me gasp. He's still slugging forward, his head craned back, his smile dazzling, his laugh rolling off in a way so loud I imagine it dipping past Great Diamond Island and over the horizon, reaching all the way to the other parts of the world. I scramble up and haul after him. The buoys are bobbing 20 feet ahead of us, and the water is at my knees, and then my thighs, and then all the way to my waist, until both of us are half running and half swimming, frantically paddling forward with our arms. I can't breathe or think or do anything but laugh and splash and focus on the bright red bobbing buoys. Focus on winning, I have to win. And when we're only a few feet away, and he's still in the lead and my shoes are leaden and filled with water, my clothes dragging me down like my pockets have been weighted with stones, without thinking, I leap forward and tackle him, wrestling down into the water, feeling my foot connect with his thigh as I rocket off of him and reach out to slap the nearest buoy, the plastic shooting away from my hand when I hit it. We must be a quarter mile off the beach, but the tide's still going out so I can stand, the water hitting me at my chest. I raise my arms triumphantly as Alex comes up, spluttering water, shaking his head so water pinwheels from his hair. "I won," I pan out. "You cheated," he says, pushing forward a few more steps and collapsing with both arms behind him, looped over the rope stringing along the buoys. He arches his back so his face is tilted up towards the sky. His t-shirt is completely soaked and water beads off of his eyelids.